Have you ever come out of an interview thinking, I didn't say half of what I meant to say? Or looked at someone else's LinkedIn profile and thought to yourself, wow, they know how to put themselves across really well. I wish I could do that. If that feels familiar, this video's for you. Because I think that there's something that happens to experienced professionals, particularly those that have worked either in the charity sector or in public services. The more you've actually done, the harder it becomes to talk about it. And I want to be clear, this isn't a video about imposter syndrome, although I have made some of those. It's something different. And in some ways, I think it's actually a bigger problem. Today, I'm going to talk about something which you could call the articulation gap. What it is, where it comes from, and what you can do about it. Because not being able to describe what you bring could cost you more than you think. So what is this articulation gap which Lucy has made up? Imposter syndrome gets all the attention, that feeling of I'm a fraud, I don't really belong here, somebody's going to find me out. And that, of course, is real. It's so real, I've even made a video about it, which I'll link to below. But I think that there's something that sits alongside imposter syndrome, which I haven't really heard people talking about. And it goes like this. You know that you're capable. You know that you've handled important, difficult, demanding work in extremely difficult circumstances sometimes. But sometimes in the moment when somebody asks you to describe what it is that you bring, you find it difficult to put into words. Or you find the words and they sound thin, like they could describe almost anybody who's been around as long as you have and done similar things to what you've done. And that's the gap between what you know you've done, the skills that you know you bring, and the words that you can actually find to describe them. And it matters because if you can't find the words to describe your experience and your skills in a job interview or a promotion conversation, then how can you sell yourself effectively? It makes it more difficult to position yourself for something new. It makes it more difficult for you to write an effective CV or resume. You can't write a CV that opens doors or stand in front of a potential client and give them a reason to trust you. The capability is there, of course it is, but unfortunately the words don't come easily enough. So where does this come from? I don't think it's a personal failing. I think it has roots back in your experience. The first is sector culture. In non-profit or public services, it's the work that's the thing. You're measured by what you deliver for the people that you serve. Self-promotion doesn't just feel awkward, it feels actively wrong, like taking credit for something that was always bigger than you. The second is team identity. If you've spent years leading teams, you probably don't think of the achievements as yours, you think of them as collective. So when somebody asks, what did you specifically contribute? Your instinct is to talk about we, what we contributed. And of course, this isn't wrong. It's generous and it's true, but it's actively unhelpful if somebody's trying to understand exactly what it is that you brought to the party. The third is a kind of compression problem. When you've done a lot of things over time, then you tend to group them all into a label and compress them. So you might have a label which is stakeholder management, strategic leadership, change management. All of these labels are accurate, but they're also vague. They could be on anybody's CV, and they're also kind of jargony. The real value lies in the specifics, and by compressing all of the specifics under a label, that strips away those specifics. And the fourth is the modesty reflex, especially in the UK, especially in the voluntary sector, especially sometimes if you're female. It can cause deep discomfort to be seen to be bigging yourself up. You learn early on that it's safer to understate, safer to say I contributed rather than I led, safer to say I was part of rather than I was responsible for. And over time, that reflex doesn't just change your language, it changes what you feel and believe that you can claim. So this isn't a confidence problem, it's a cultural problem and it's a structural problem. And it's been reinforced by every sector norm and every team celebration and every form that you've been asked to fill in that asks you to summarise 30 years of complex, demanding work into 3 bullet points. So I want to offer you a reframe that I find genuinely useful. Think about it this way. You're not talking about yourself. You're giving the person the information that they need to make a decision. If you're in an interview, the panel needs to know this information to know whether you can do the job. If you're meeting a potential client, they need to know whether you've got the skills and experience to be able to help them. If you're writing a profile somewhere, the person reading it needs to know quickly whether you're a person worth following up. When you hold it that way, the boasting problem largely disappears. Because you're not saying, look at me, look how impressive I am. You're saying, here is the evidence relevant to your decision. Now, here's where most people go wrong. They go too vague, or they wrap what they're saying in so many caveats that the substance disappears. I'm experienced in change management. That's a claim. It tells me nothing. I've led 3 organisational restructures, each one during a time of extraordinary time and financial pressures, and each one while managing a major funder relationship which could have collapsed at any moment. That's evidence. That tells me something specific about the kind of complexity you've navigated and the kind of pressure that you can withstand. Being specific is the difference between a claim and evidence is what builds trust. So here's something I want you to actually try, not just nod at and move on. Think of one thing you're genuinely good at. Just one thing, not your whole career. Say it out loud the way you normally would, the way you'd write it on a form or the way you'd say it in a meeting. Now ask yourself honestly, how specific is that? Could someone who's never met you understand the full weight of what you've just described? Or did you just take 20 years of hard-won experience and judgment and reduce it to something that could be on anybody's profile? Because that's what most of us do. Try again, but this time tell me the context. What was actually happening? What was at stake? What made it hard? What could have gone wrong if you hadn't got it right? That version is the one that lands. That's the version that makes someone think, I need that person on my team. The reason I think that this topic is important is because I don't think it's talked about enough, and I wanted to share it because it's something that's, I think, plagued me a bit all my career. I think growing up, we get used to being told not to show off. It's almost ringing in my ears as a child, don't show off, Lucy. And I don't think it was anybody specific telling me not to show off, to be honest, because I grew up being encouraged to be whatever I wanted to be. But I think that there's a societal pressure not to big yourself up in the way that I described at the beginning of the video. And over time, I've learned to sort of draw out the specifics of what I've achieved. And when I think about them, there've been some really big things, but I naturally wouldn't sort of describe them in the way that would sell me. So these days, in fact, with the help of AI tools, I'm able to give my CV almost to an AI tool and ask it to recraft the words in a way that sells the person. And it feels quite uncomfortable, to be honest, because it sort of spits out words at you that don't feel like you, because there's such a kind of gap, as I've said, that articulation gap. But it does help you to be more dispassionate and more able to see the value and the truth in what you've done. So give that a try. You know, if you've got an AI tool that you use, ask it to redraft your CV in terms which sort of sell the specifics and big you up a bit, and see what you end up with. And maybe there's a middle ground that'll feel more comfortable. Anyway, give it a go. And I think that this matters beyond a job application process. I think it matters beyond writing a CV and beyond being in face-to-face with an interviewer, because I think that the real cost of this articulation gap is systemic. When capable, experienced, worthy people can't name what they bring, that could mean that the wrong people get promoted. The people who can talk about themselves fluently, whether or not the substance is there, they're the ones that fill the room. And the people with real substance, they often stay quiet. And I see this all the time. Brilliant, experienced leaders who've spent their whole careers making things better for other people, and they can't put into words what it is that they've actually done. So they get overlooked, not because they're not good enough, but because they can't make it visible. And I think that matters. It doesn't just affect you, it affects every decision that it gets made without your voice in the room. Being able to describe your value isn't just about vanity, it's about being able to carry on doing the work that matters, and for the best people to carry on doing the work that matters. If you're feeling stuck in your career at the moment and you're exploring other opportunities and where you go next, and you'd like to talk through it one-to-one with someone, I'd love to speak to you. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll put a link down below in the description for you to get in touch with me. My name's Lucy. I'm a coach and consultant, and I make videos every week on escaping toxic workplaces and finding work where you can be truly fulfilled. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.